Just when it looked like the Jeffrey Epstein coverage might be fading a bit, the media spotlight is turning to his imprisoned associate serving a 20-year sentence for sex trafficking. Hours after the Justice Department announced plans to meet with Ghislaine Maxwell, the House subpoenaed her to testify, raising this intriguing question. Could she wind up giving televised testimony on the Hill? The meetings took place Thursday and Friday, more than 8 hours worth, with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, a former Trump criminal lawyer. A reporter at the White House asked the president if he would consider pardoning Maxwell or commuting her sentence.
It's something I haven't thought about. It's really something. It's something I'm allowed to do it, but it's something I have not thought about.
The media reaction now seems to cut across the political spectrum.
The fact that they're deploying this DOJ official to talk to Ms. Maxwell, it seems like window dressing to me. I would imagine she has been squeezed many times over the course of this entire investigation.
The problem is that some of us are rather skeptical that there is something significant with Maxwell being withheld. If so, the expiration date on this milk ran a long time ago.
Any criminal defense lawyer would be able to tell Ghislaine Maxwell exactly what she has to say to get out of prison. She has to say Donald Trump knew nothing about it.
It was just over a week ago that the president asked people to stop talking about the Epstein saga. Now he's calling it a scam. Many in the media, of course, would like the story to go on endlessly. I'm Howard Kurtz, and this is Media Buzz. A federal judge has rejected the president's request to release grand jury documents in the Epstein case, saying that is only possible under extremely rare circumstances. Fox News can report the following. During a meeting in the spring, Attorney General Pam Bondi told President Trump his name was in the Epstein files. Our reporting says the president was not surprised since he acknowledged being friendly with Epstein before cutting off their relationship. Trump also offered this response.
Was the president on your name appearing in the Epstein files ever?
No, I was never briefed. No.
On July 15th, Trump told reporters that Bondi had, quote, given us just a very quick briefing.
Why should he go out there and have to own up to anything? He's not ever been credibly accused.
Look, it would not be a shock if President Trump's name was in the files. They were friends. Both of them have said they were friends.
Quite obviously, it looks now like the president may be trying to hide something to protect himself and his own reputation.
Joining us now to analyze the coverage, Sarah Bedford, investigations editor at the Washington Examiner. And in Connecticut, Charlie Gasparino, senior correspondent for Fox Business Network. Sarah, Donald Trump's name is in the files, which may not mean anything at all. We don't know what the context is. Lots of people's names probably in the files. We've seen the pictures. They were friends. Should many in the media be treating this as a bombshell?
I think the way that the White House and President Donald Trump have been reacting to this is somewhat baffling because it is well publicized that they ran in the same social circles in Palm Beach in the 80s, 90s, and the early 2000s, and that they had some sort of falling out before Jeffrey Epstein was ever charged with any crime. That is all in the public domain. It's been discussed at length. And so the fact that Donald Trump doesn't just own up to it and acknowledge all of this and move on, I think it is making the PR crisis worse for them.
But when you have the number 2 justice official, Sarah, Todd Blanche, devoting 2 days to doing these interviews, and many journalists have raised this question, what credibility would she have at this point?
There have always been questions about whether the DOJ undercharged her in order to secure a conviction at a time when the DOJ was under a lot of pressure to do that. The Trump DOJ just fired the main prosecutor who handled all of that. There were questions about evidence that was withheld. So if you are a diehard Epstein fan, you've been following this for years, this is a step that you've wanted investigators to take. But the questions about her credibility are legitimate. She has an appeal pending before the Supreme Court right now that Trump's Justice Department is opposing. So she definitely has an incentive to potentially inflate the information that she has.
I would just briefly note that given the heinous crimes that committed by Epstein, which have been well documented, I don't think there are any Epstein fans. I think you mean people closely following.
Following the case, of course not.
Charlie, does the fact that Pam Bondi and Donald Trump at least briefly talked about this in the spring suggest, and that's coming out now, suggest that if the president and company didn't want this coming out before?
You know, Trump has fessed up to a lot of stuff on Epstein. I mean, it is what it is. They were friends. He was friends with everybody. You know, if you really want to dig into this whole sort of drama about, the conspiracy, you look on who signed that birthday card, right? So Trump allegedly signed, he says he didn't, but there was Jimmy Kane and Ace Greenberg who were running Bear Stearns, where Epstein worked and did all his brokerage work through. And that's where Donald Trump did his brokerage work through. All this is out there, and it's sound and fury, and it signifies nothing. I think the Trump administration, Pam Bondi, is to blame for inflating this to some insane level with, I got this thing on my desk. It's a client list. She had to have known what was in there had Trump's name in it, because he was friendly with Epstein, and they had all these mutual friends. And in my view, and again, Howie, I think I told you this, I've interviewed Epstein at length. I looked under a lot of rocks here. This is sound and fury, signifying nothing. And by the way, Ghislaine Maxwell is not undercharged. She's in jail for 20 years. I mean, 20 years in jail when you're like in your 50s is almost a death sentence. So let's be clear here. If she really had something valuable, she would be spewing that already, and she'd be out of jail.
Well, she'd love to get out of jail. They haven't made up their mind about whether they would testify on the Hill. Imagine the spectacle that would be. Meanwhile, yes. The White House has bounced the Wall Street Journal from the press pool. Sarah, we have no way of knowing at this point whether, I mean, she certainly could maybe generate some sympathy as a televised witness, but the New York Times reporting that 100,000 documents have been reviewed by prosecutors and others working shifts around the clock before they reached the earlier decision not to release anything. And I think it does put it in a different light if other people also were invited to give Epstein birthday messages. And it wasn't just Donald Trump, even though it was initially reported that way.
Right. I think, there is an argument to be made that there are political partisan reasons that the story was presented the way it was. And obviously it's relevant in that the Justice Department right now is trying to make this story go away. And Donald Trump does have these links to Jeffrey Epstein. But for the White House, the defensiveness that we've seen, the dismissal of things that are obviously true, as Charlie mentioned, Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were friends. He's been photographed with Ghislaine Maxwell, with Jeffrey Epstein. So to just not come out and acknowledge that has, I think, deepened the problems for the White House.
They have, but Sarah, they have acknowledged it. I mean, we all know this. I mean, it seems to be the biggest bunch of nothing in terms of connections and clients and all this that I've ever seen.
So why is it getting so much media attention if it's a big bunch of nothing, Charlie?
Oh, really? Do you really want to get into the psyche of why media plays certain stories and not others? I mean, listen, it is salacious. It's very salacious. It is a guy that was kind of in the background of Wall Street, but he had all these very high-level connections. He was very rich, and he was a disgusting human being in his private life. We all know that. There has never been one piece of evidence to show that any of these quote-unquote clients and friends of his, whether it was philanthropy or his money management business, you name it, friends, his lawyer, like Alan Dershowitz, there's no evidence. It's quite the contrary, that they weren't involved in his disgusting activity. Donald Trump, no evidence. There won't be any evidence. Trust me, not going to be any evidence. But we keep talking about this because we have an endless imagination for the worst possible stuff when it's Occam's razor every time. He was just a sleaze in his private life.
Well, after the two-day interview, Maxwell's lawyer, David Marcus, came out and spoke to reporters. Let's roll it.
She answered those questions honestly, truthfully. She did not get a fair trial. No prosecutor even mentioned her until Epstein died.
Sarah, I just want to enlighten people. She was convicted of 5 counts: sex trafficking of a minor, conspiracy to arrange travel by minors to engage in illegal sex acts. The judge at sentencing said this was heinous and predatory, and it's been held on appeal, at least till now.
That's right. I think, there's a discrepancy between the Justice Department under Pam Bondi has come out and said that there were more than 1,000 victims of Jeffrey Epstein, and Maxwell was by his side for all of those years. And the trial, the criticism comes from the trial really only focusing on a very, very small number of victims. So the outrage is that there were so many more victims out there who didn't get justice because Epstein died before he could go to trial. There was this sort of lust for blood from the public when Ghislaine Maxwell did come up before the court. But there's just a segment of people who believe with an almost religious fervor that there is some sort of conspiracy here. There's not much that the Trump Justice Department can do to satiate them, and they have continuously made it worse when they came into office with these lofty promises they could never have hoped to fulfill.
Charlie, Ghislaine Maxwell has been charged, let me just jump in with a question, has been charged in the past with perjury. She had the opportunity, regardless of what her lawyer says, to testify at her trial and chose not to. And also, like, who would she give up at this point? The main person you might expect her to give up is dead.
Yeah, I mean, if you follow the conspiracy theory, there was this secret pedophile ring of rich guys. Where are they? By the way, one of the reasons why she was only charged with sort of a fraction of the alleged victims is because a lot of the victims' testimony just didn't hold up. That's why initially Epstein was lightly charged. They felt they didn't have the goods to create this grand scheme. I mean, go back and ask Alex Acosta, he'll tell you. So that doesn't mean both of these people aren't despicable, horrible human beings. But again, Howie, I guess the story is, why is the MAGA base so infatuated with this conspiracy theory? I mean, I think that's a story, and that Trump kind of and some of his people played into that, and that they made a huge mistake doing that. To me, that is the relevant story here. Not whether any of this stuff is going to lead to anywhere, because I can tell you, the people that signed that, I know a lot of people that signed that birthday card, they were not involved in anything that you're reading about regarding Epstein in terms of his illegal and disgusting activity. I just know these folks. It's just not true. And we're not going to get any evidence that it was true.
And Sarah, just briefly, there's a new effort in the media by some in the media to paint Ghislaine Maxwell as a victim. There's a Newsmax anchor who often takes a Trump line, and it's like, oh, we should feel sorry for her. But that does seem to fly in the face of the conviction and the evidence.
I think there's just so much misinformation and strange warping of partisan lines around this conspiracy theories about Epstein. But at the end of the day, I think Charlie's right. There's nothing that's going to come out that's going to satisfy these people.
Charlie Gasparino, thanks for joining us.
There's no worse story, Howie, then there's no story. Been saying there's no story.
All right.
I mean, this is like this is clicks. I mean, this is where we are.
Thanks for sharing your story.
This
and
disgusting
ratings,
stuff.
yeah. All right.
Where we are.
Charlie, good to see you. Sarah, stick around.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.